a backpack over a purse chick. Never at your service, here for your worst days. Don't it sound perfect? I know what I bring to the table, to the table. I know what I bring to the table, to the table.
What's good, y'all? It's your girl Deezy, your new best friend, back with a random story time that I had no intentions on filming until today. This is a story time about my new crazy doctor, okay? This is like a culmination of like a few months that just kind of like today just resulted in me being like, what the fuck? Like, literally. So, just to kind of like backtrack, and this story, like, I don't want to offend anybody who are on like antidepressants, medications, anybody in the medical field, nothing like that. This is just my experience. So, I had a doctor that I had for like 8 years. I was really, really happy with her. She was my doctor. She was my fiance's doctor, and we loved her so much. And she ended up moving. And so in July, I ended up having to go see a new doctor. And at the place that I go, there was only one female doctor. Now, let me back up. She's not technically a doctor, or maybe she is. You guys can tell me down below. I don't really know how that works. And excuse the way I look, because y'all, I literally just woke up for a nap, and I just wanted to, like, film this story time. So she's an APRN, so I guess that's an advanced registered nurse type of thing. My previous doctor was a full-on, like, MD. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying one's better or worse. So I saw her in July because I have anxiety. I also have something called veophobia. I don't know if I've talked about that before. I plan on talking about that a lot more, like in some future videos. Essentially, I just have like an extreme irrational fear of driving that affects me in a lot of different ways. So I went to this doctor because I needed to refill my anxiety prescriptions. And you have to go in like once or twice a year so they can just like talk to you, make sure everything's okay. Before re-prescribing you these medications, because they're technically like a controlled substance. I take Xanax. So I went in there, and when she came in, she's very much so like, let me set the scene. She's like a young doctor. I want to say she might be younger than me, or maybe my age. Young, blonde, kind of hip looking girl, lash extensions, like hair extensions, whatever. And I can tell just like right off the bat, she's definitely trying everything she can not to refill my Xanax prescriptions. And so she comes in and she's like, well, what makes you think that you need to take Xanax? And then I told her about my veophobia, and I can tell she was caught off guard by that, because I could tell she was just looking for me to say like, oh, well, I get really nervous, or I just have social anxiety or something like that. But I can tell that when I said that to her, she was definitely like, oh, well, like that's kind of like a big deal. Like, I was explaining to her that this affects like literally like every second of my life, like all the time. And so she kind of like backed off that, but I kind of was a little put off because she was like, well, because I explained to her that like the worst months for me are going into the winter months. And so I saw her in July. And so obviously like fall's coming up and winter. And she kind of made a comment where like she was kind of trying to insinuate that like in the the next go around, she probably was not going to approve my anxiety prescription, which in turn gave me anxiety. And then, so that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then I know there are some new laws in place with like controlled substances, so that they make you take a drug test once a year just to make sure that your levels are right, that you don't have like other drugs in your system. And off the bat, like, let me just set the stage. My hair's orange. I was not put together at all. Like, my hair was back in a bun. I had no makeup. I was dressed bummy. And I think that does have a lot to do with like how doctors treat you. So, I could definitely tell that she was trying to like, there was a lot of microaggressions in there, calling me like sis and like girlfriend, which immediately like was not like making me feel the best. And then when she told me about the drug test, I'm like, cool, like that's fine, I can take one today. And then she proceeds to like scoot over and sit next to me, and then like nudges me, and she's like, but weed like isn't a big deal, don't worry about it. And I'm thinking like, good, because your girl doesn't do that. And then she was like cussing. And I like, some people might be cool with that, but to me, like, I like, especially when you have like colored hair, and I've like talked to other hairdressers about how they feel like they definitely get treated differently, or like less service, because people think they're like cool or just like super relaxed. I've had that issue before. I've had that issue with like nannies that I've hired in the past and things like that, they just have kind of like a different worldview of you because like think you quote unquote look like different than the regular people in society. So that kind of put me off. And after that appointment, so I peed in the cup. She talked to me for like, what I remember about this is this was like the longest appointment I've ever had in my life. This was like an hour. And we talked at length about migraines, which I've had all my life. So she talked about my migraine medication and then very briefly like hinted that she wasn't going to be refilling my Xanax prescription. And then out the door, she comes back in and is like, oh yeah, did you need any refills today? I'm thinking, yeah, that's the entire reason I'm here is because every 3 months I have to come in and have an appointment to get my Xanax refilled. Like, that's the entire reason I'm here. So a few days later, flash forward to a few days later, I get a phone call saying, hey, we got your drug test back. Everything was fine. In fact, your levels of Xanax were like pretty low in your system, so you're good to go. I'm like thinking, yeah, I know. And then I was like, by the way, you guys were supposed to send migraine medication to my pharmacy that never was sent. Can you guys resend that? They're like, sure. It never got sent. So fast forward, like my entire appointment that first time revolved primarily around migraines. And then another thing that I didn't mention is she was like really trying hard to push me on depression medication. And at the time I had shared with her that I hadn't had depression in like a year and a half. I had taken depression medication pills for like 9 years. So I was pretty proud of the fact that like I didn't have any depression. And she was kind of adamant and trying to push me in that direction to take antidepressants, which I kind of found to be kind of weird. And then only to not even send the migraine medication. So fast forward, it's that time again that I need to go in. I thought I was going to have to pee and drug test today. It would have been fine. But I didn't. So I go in and I just have this feeling that the appointment is going to take an extremely long time. And boy, was I right. So I go in and the nurse is like, are you here for anything? I'm like, nope, this is just my 3 months so that I could get a re-up on my anxiety medication. And I have a few questions. So the doctor comes into the room and she's like, tell me about your Xanax usage. Told her like what I told her before. Sometimes it's none. I'm prescribed 2 Xanax a day as needed. Sometimes I take none, sometimes I take a half, sometimes I take 2. Depends on how stressful my day is and how I'm feeling. So I explained that to her and explained to her again, I don't know if you remember me, but I have veophobia, so it's tied to veophobia. This is a really bad season for me. Also, I explained to her that I had been experiencing depression like really bad from November on. It had gotten better. Like I don't feel that way now, but it was like really bad November, December, and like halfway of January. And so we kind of get off of that and she starts talking about, and I'm like, you know, maybe there's something in like along with the Xanax that I could take like every day. I explained to her, I don't want to take anything like super harsh, like an antidepressant, because I've been on those for years. They kind of turn you, in my experience, to like a shell of yourself. And I mean, I guess you could argue, is that better or worse? I mean, are you better because you're just sleepy all the time? And you really just like don't care about anything. But I was adamant, like I can't do that. Like I'm starting a job in March, a very important job, and I just can't do that. So is there something that maybe is just like something that's not as harsh as an all the time antidepressant that I can take along with my Xanax, with the eventual goal of getting off of Xanax? Obviously nobody wants to be on medication for the rest of their life. And this is where things start to get weird, bro. So she just, like, she's one of those people, too, that when she talks to you, she closes her eyes for, like, a really long time. And, like, and I'm talking for, like, but, like, and she did that last time, too. I remember that in my mind. But this would be, like, for, like, minutes at a time. So it was, like, minutes of silence. And then she just, like, she was not forming complete sentences. And she would just be like, well, the thing is with daily use drugs, and then would just like stop in the middle of it and like close her eyes. And I guess they're starting this new thing where instead of the doctors documenting the notes in their charts, they bring in like a tablet and there's somebody like real time on the phone who's documenting the case notes for them. And so I just remember thinking like, I bet this person on this like tablet thing is thinking like how weird this appointment's going. And a lot of stuff I'm going to tell you, like, I'm putting together the pieces, but like she did not put, like, she was not saying things as eloquent as I'm putting them. So there was just a point where she just like looks at me and she's like, Danielle, like, I don't know how to help you. And I'm thinking, like, I'm not asking for anything super weird. Like, if there's no such thing as like a milder antidepressant that also helps with anxiety, then like that's fine. I guess I just assumed because I was prescribed Xanax, and then when I very first was prescribed Xanax, I kind of was afraid of like the addictive quality. So I asked them if there was something like Xanax that was less addictive, and it's something called like propanol. It happened to not work for me, but I guess I just assumed like that every drug had like a lesser drug that was non-addictive. That makes sense to me. I see a lot of like commercials that are like, are you taking anxiety medication or depression medication, and you just need like this more of like an add-on medication that kind of helps with that. I was looking for that, but I was adamant that I did not want to experience like weight gain. Decreased sex drive was a huge one. And then like I'm telling you, periods of like extreme silence, just like eyes closed, just like rocking back and forth, and like to the point where like I'm like, what do I say? And then she just gets up out of the room and she goes and gets me this paper and sits next to me, and then like she's looking at this paper but like not saying anything to me, and then she points at all the medications, and it's essentially like all of these antidepressant medications, and like your sex drive, weight gain was one of them, tiredness, like fatigue, and like how bad the like side effects are for each of them. And I see that the one that I'd been on the longest, like 9 years, has like the highest amount of like side effects. So I'm like, well, that explains a lot. And so like I'm assuming what she's trying to tell me is like there's really no way to do that, but she's not saying anything. She's just like, the thing is about like, you know, like I'm really big onto like as needed, like things that are like every day happening in your life, but like, and like this is literally how she's speaking, and then would just like not form complete sentences or thoughts, to the point where it was like awkward, and I felt the need to like fill in the gaps. And I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me is like there's just like no such thing as that. Like that's fine. Like that's fine. I'll just like stick with this. She's like, well, what? Like I don't understand. Like what is the need for it? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not currently depressed, but I guess I'm trying to get ahead of it. Something that I could take every day with maybe it would help me like not have to take Xanax every day, and we could eliminate that. This all seems common sense to me. And like something that's not so harsh, like a straight antidepressant that's making me like apathetic, to where you like have no feelings towards anything, your passions, your goals, like these are common things that happen when you're on like antidepressants. You want to sleep all the time. It's like, are you better? I mean, like you're tired, you really don't care, and I don't know if that necessarily means that you're better. But if there's not that, then like that's fine. And like I said, and like I'm telling you, there was just like periods of silence where she would just like keep repeating the same thing over and over again and never like finish a thought. So then I kind of got to the point where I'm like, is she thinking that maybe I'm here trying to get harsher drugs, like medications? So I was like, well, like, because she wasn't saying anything to me. It was like really weird. Like, you know, normally a doctor would be like, well, you know, like unfortunately the only things on the market have side effects, but this particular one has low side effects. You could go ahead and take it, let me know. And if it doesn't work for you, then we could try something else. Like nothing. Like she wasn't saying anything. So it got to the point where I was like, you know what, like that's like fine. But I'm also here too because I got in an accident in November, and I have really bad like whiplash, and I have like really bad muscle spasms. And I would clarify again, I don't need to be on like a muscle relaxer that like gets you high. I literally just need something to help with the problem. I am not here doctor shopping for nothing like that, because I was like, is that what she thinks I'm doing? Because I made it very clear to like let her know like that's not what I want. And then she just like stops and gets like beet red, turns around, she's looking at the computer, and I see her pull up my like you have to sign this like substance abuse thing like once a year, and that goes hand in hand with like your drug test, and I see her pull it up, and the last time I did it was in July, so I'm not due for like another drug test and to sign this paper again in July. And she turns around, and like I don't know if she was going to be okay with getting me muscle relaxers, but just to like, because the vibe was so awkward, I'm just like, you know, that's fine. And she was like, to be honest, like, yeah, there's nothing. Like, there's no such thing. Like, there are, unfortunately, I'm like, I see, I'm like, it seems like it would be common sense to me that there would be like drugs out there or pharmaceuticals that did not have 1,000 different side effects that turn you into a zombie. It would make sense to me that there would be something that helps relax your muscles that also doesn't have a high type feeling to it. There should be drugs out there that help with anxiety that also don't have a like high like hazy feeling to them. Like, these things should exist, but apparently they don't. So she just turns around to me and she's just like, honestly, like, no, there's like not. And I'm like, okay, like, no, like, that's fine. And then she turns like beet red, and she starts like going, like, starts like closing her eyes and rocking back and forth, and she starts just like repeating propanol, which is the name of like one of the medications that I was prescribed that was supposed to be like a lower dose Xanax without like a less addictive Xanax. And she's just like, propanol, daily use as needed. And she's just like whispering this to herself, bro. And I'm just like in the room, like, what is going on? She's not like tying anything together. There's like no bedside manner. She went out of the room like 3 times, to the point where like I was able to text my fiance 3 times. Like something is wrong with like my doctor. She gets a phone call while we're in there on like the landline thing, because we've been in this room so long and she's not speaking, and like I'm the one coming up with the suggestions, and it's like really awkward. And I could tell that they told her, like, you're gonna need to speed this up. So pretty much I I was like, okay, we've got to end this. So it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, so as far as I like muscle relaxers, it's fine, I'll figure it out. As far as the antidepressants, you know what, like, that's fine. I live very close. I guess if I start to feel that way, like, I could just come to you. I kind of have some issue with that, because if anybody knows about depression, like, you don't feel like going anywhere. It seems totally logical to me to want to find a low grade antidepressant to remedy depression, instead of waiting until you're full blown in depression. Like, that makes sense to me, but like, I guess it didn't make sense to her at the time. Like, I don't know. I don't want to be on antidepressants. I hate them. But if you need to be on them and you're trying to be responsible, that seemed like it made sense to me. So pretty much I'm the one who summarized the whole appointment, pretty much finished it. And then at the end, I told her, hey, I need to make a womanly checkup for like a pap smear. I just want to like add, I'm kind of weird about those. And I kind of shared something personal, like I'm kind of weird. But I do need to like schedule one of those with you. And then she turns, like, I see in her eyes, like she's like a completely different person. And now she's just like this really blank stare, and she says nothing to me. Like, I like shared something very personal and was like, so I kind of like have a hard time. And she just is like, and then what proceeds to, so I'm like, okay. And then she proceeds to walk over the door with the paper. Normally they're like, okay, well, you're free to go, or it was good to see you, I have those prescriptions sent. Like, nothing. And I'm just there like, so am I okay to go? And she was like, sure. And like, I thought that was like a really weird response. Like, sure, like, what? And so I leave. I don't even put my coat on. I just leave. And like, the nurses are all looking at me like really weird. And she's looking at me like weird. And then I start to question, like, am I the weird one? Like, was I being weird during this appointment? So me and Babe go to like a brunch afterwards, and I'm telling him this, and I'm like, I feel so weird about how this appointment went. Like, the first time I didn't have a good experience of her insinuating like that I smoked weed, and like cussing in front of me and being like, well, you know, we drug test, and I don't know if I'm gonna refill your Xanax, to this time. And it was just really weird. And I'm telling you guys this because I come home and I take a nap, because when I am overwhelmed and I have a lot of anxiety, that's my toxic trait, is I sleep. And I'm sleeping and I keep getting phone call after phone call after phone call. And I go to answer, like they've called like 3 times, and I go to answer one time and they say that their name is, and it's the name of my doctor, but I'm not putting 2 and 2 together, and my phone dies. I'm like, that's weird. So I go and I charge my phone. I don't get any more phone calls. I go, I pick my daughter up from school, and I'm looking at my phone, and I realize that I have 3 missed messages from this doctor. And as I notice this, the doctor calls she's like, yeah, I'm just like really unhappy about how the appointment went today. Like, I feel like I didn't help you like at all, which I'm like, same. I mean, like, yeah. And then she's like, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a type, and she said something about a diabetic, diabetes, and she was like, I just felt like I was having a crash in the room, and I guess I should have said something. And that would have been fine, but what she said next is what was weird to me. After that, she goes, yeah, I just, like, all day, I just wasn't in the right headspace to be, like, taking patients. And I'm thinking, like, well, so did you have a crash? Because I know people who have that kind of diabetes, and, like, it happens, I don't want to say suddenly, but it's like a event. It's not something that starts from the morning time and builds, typically. And so, like, towards the end of the phone call, she's like, I feel really bad, like I really want to do like a free appointment for you, or like a tele-appointment for you. And I'm like, okay, like, no, like, that's fine. And I'm just thinking, like, it was really weird because in the beginning she said it was due to her diabetes, but then, like, towards the end, she very much so made it seem like it was like something else. Like, she was just like, I had no business giving medical advice today. Like, I just really shouldn't have. I wasn't in the headspace this morning when I came into work. And I'm just like, what is happening? She's like, it's a good thing I didn't prescribe you anything, because, like, I didn't even know, like, what I was doing or what was going on. So yeah, guys, I guess I have a telehealth appointment with her tomorrow. I'll make an update if anything happens, but, like, if it was just this appointment alone, I'd be like, weird. But the phone calls, like, I'm like, I knew I wasn't crazy when I left. I was like, something was off about my doctor's appointment. And then that combined with the first one, like, I don't know if my doctor, like, there was definitely a point, and I shared, like, where it seemed like she was, like, medicated. Like, I remember this point where she was, like, on the chair, like, nodding off, and then she was just, like, rubbing her pants, and she was just, like, obsessed with, like, her pants and, like, her boots. And I remember, like, thinking, like, something is off right now. So anyway, guys, that's my weird story time about my new doctor or whatnot. If you guys like this, make sure that you hit a like button as well as comments, just because I don't ever really say that, but I notice, like, probably should, because the likes and the comments, like, are important to me. I like to hear what you guys say. So I will see you guys in my next one, where I get to, like, film something that I actually wanted to film today. I will see you guys in my next one.